The middle class is working harder than ever, but it's being absolutely eviscerated by Bidenomics. Michael Snyder reports, what in the world is happening to the middle class? Once upon a time, the United States had the largest and most vibrant middle class in the history of the world. When I was growing up, a single income was all that was needed to support a middle class lifestyle for an entire family. My mother didn't work outside of the home, and that was the case with many other mothers that lived in our middle class neighborhood. None of the kids that I played with or went to school with were wealthy, but everyone lived comfortably. But now everything has changed. The middle class in America is working harder than ever, but it has been steadily shrinking. With each passing day, more Americans are falling out of the middle class and into poverty, and this is a trend that should deeply alarm all of us. In most families, both parents have to work extremely hard just so that the bills can be paid each month. In fact, in many cases, both parents are either working multiple jobs or putting in insane amounts of overtime. At this point, squeezing endless hours out of workers has become a permanent state of affairs in many industries. The following comes from an NBC News article entitled 36-Hour Shifts, 80-Hour Weeks, Workers Are Being Burned Out by Overtime. From firehouses and police stations to hospitals and manufacturing plants, workers say they are being required to work increasing overtime hours to make up for post-pandemic worker shortages, leaving them sleep-deprived, scrambling to cover childcare duties, and missing birthdays, holidays, and vacations. While the extra hours can provide a financial boost, some workers say the trade-off is no longer worth it, as they see no end in sight to a problem that has now lasted for several years. It's getting to that fever pitch moment, said Gonano, who is president of the Virginia Beach Professional Fire and EMS Union. It's just rampant. People are tired of working all the overtime. It's definitely causing moral issues, he said. Many years ago, when I worked in Washington, D.C., I remember putting in 80-hour weeks. Working such long hours can really affect your health after a while. Unfortunately, these days, many Americans have no other choice. The only way that the bills are going to get paid is by working countless hours. But even though Americans are working so hard, they aren't doing so well. According to a brand new survey, only 14% of U.S. voters say that Joe Biden's economic policies have made them better off. A new poll spells out the steep economic cliff that President Joe Biden's re-election campaign is facing. Just 14% of voters think his policies have made them better off, according to the survey published Monday. And overall, almost 70% said Biden's economic policies had either hurt the U.S. economy or had no impact, including 33% who said they believe the president's policies had hurt the economy a lot. This is one of the primary reasons why so many voters have soured on Biden. And when that same survey asked about the sources of financial stress, the number one response was inflation. When asked what was causing the most financial stress, some 82% of those surveyed said price increases. Every group, Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, list rising prices as by far the biggest economic threat and the biggest source of financial stress, said Eric Gordon, a professor at Michigan's Ross School. That's bad news for Biden, and the more so considering how little he could do to reverse a perception of prices before Election Day. Over the past several years, the cost of living has gone up much faster than paychecks have. Just look at the cost of housing. Home prices have gone into the stratosphere, and as a result, housing is now more unaffordable than it's ever been before. The income of a typical home buyer in the United States has surged to $107,000 from $88,000 last year, as home affordability precipitously worsened, according to an annual report from National Association of Retailers. The 22% jump was the highest annual increase on record and puts homeownership out of reach for many families in the United States, where the median income is about $75,000, according to the Census Bureau. Buying a home has become much harder for people as mortgage rates surged over the past 2 years and home prices continue to rise due to very low inventory. And don't even get me started on food prices. When I get to the checkout counter at my local supermarket, I feel like asking the cashier what organ I should donate in order to pay for my cart of groceries. In order to get inflation under control, the Federal Reserve has been aggressively hiking interest rates, and an economist that worked at the Fed for 6 years is warning that interest rates are going to go even higher. He said, I worked at the Fed for 6 years, and if inflation expectations are drifting higher and they're not under control, the Fed absolutely will act. Luke Tilley, chief economist at Wilmington Trust Investment Advisors, told CNN. That is the one thing that gives them trouble sleeping at night. They don't lose sleep over recessions because they come and go, but they do lose sleep over long-term inflation expectations drifting higher, he said. Of course, high interest rates are already absolutely devastating many sectors of the economy. For example, the trucking industry is in the midst of the great trucking recession right now. Everybody's calling this a great trucking recession, and it's true because all the trucking companies right now are in dark times, he said. This is not a good time to be in the trucking industry. Just to paint a picture, the trucking industry is the engine that drives the American economy forward. We're fueling growth and prosperity and by transporting goods to where they need to be, and when the engine breaks down or stops, it works like a heart. When that ceases to be, it brings the entire economic system to a halt. Yellow Corporation, for example, which is one of the nation's oldest and largest trucking companies, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in August, laying off 30,000 employees. Convoy Inc., a Seattle-based trucking startup that was valued by investors at $3.8 billion last year, shut down last month. Our politicians in Washington have been borrowing and spending trillions upon trillions of dollars in a desperate attempt to prop up the economy, but it is not working. But all of that borrowing and spending is making our long-term financial outlook a lot worse. In fact, Moody's just reduced the rate outlook for the U.S. government from stable to negative. Moody's Investor Service on Friday lowered its ratings outlook on the United States government to negative from stable, pointing to rising risks to the nation's fiscal strength. The ratings agency has affirmed the long-term issuer and senior unsecured ratings of the USA at capital A, small a, small a. In the context of the higher interest rates, without effective fiscal policy measures to reduce government spending or increase revenues, the agency said, Moody's expects that the U.S. fiscal deficit will remain very large, significantly weakening debt affordability. We really are in the end game. Our leaders were able to keep the party going for a long time, but now the jig is up. Inflation is out of control, the value of our currency is being destroyed, and debt levels have reached cataclysmic proportions. The era of seemingly endless prosperity is over, and an extraordinary amount of pain is ahead of us. A full-blown economic meltdown has now begun, and there's nothing that Joe Biden can do to reverse this process. This is by Michael Snyder. He says, about the author, my name is Michael, and my brand new book entitled Chaos is now available in paperback and for the Kindle on Amazon. In addition to my new book, I've written 7 other books that are available on Amazon, including 70 Apocalypse, Lost Prophecies of the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters, commissions earned. When you purchase any of these books, you help to support the work that I'm doing, and one way that you can really help is by sending copies as gifts to family and friends. Time is short, and I need help getting these warnings into the hands of as many people as possible. I've also started a brand new Substack newsletter, and I encourage you to subscribe so you won't miss any of my articles. I've published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog and of the American Dream and the most important news. And the articles that I publish on those sites are republished on dozens of other prominent websites all over the globe. I always freely and happily allow others to republish my articles on their own websites, but I also ask that they include this about the author section with each article. The material contained in this article is for general information purposes only, and readers should consult licensed professionals before making legal, business, financial, or health decisions. I encourage you to follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter, and any way that you can share these other articles with others is definitely a great help. These are such troubled times and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, I strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. And this is by Michael Snyder on the Economic Collapse blog. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.